Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment to like and share the program so that your friends can know where the conversation is taking place. Also, if you haven't already done so, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, as well as Twitter. In the case of Facebook and YouTube, please make sure that you hit the notification button. That way, you get notified as soon as we go live, and you can participate in the live chat as the program is taking place. Also want to encourage you, if you haven't been there lately, you need to visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. It is the place to go to find all of your really cool Pro 2A swag. I'm talking tank tops. I'm talking t-shirts. I'm talking stuff for the ladies. I'm talking about a doormat, just so that you can make sure in case the, law enforcement and federal officers come over and decide that, they want to come in. Well, you make sure they know, hey, you need a warrant, right? Every household has got to have one of those. Also, in the time of COVID, certain places you go, going to require you to wear a mask. Might as well make sure that you're sending the right message if you're going to have to wear that mask. Just saying. Anyway, you can find it all, folks, at fpcgear.com. So make sure that you check it out. All right. Let's get into today's topic. I'll tell you, there's been a lot of discussion. I've had a lot of conversations with folks over the last few months, just about, in particular, relating to the Second Amendment and everything that's been going on with COVID. And we'll have some more conversations about that as well. But one of the things that I find interesting is that there's these myths that seem to be perpetuated over and over and over again by the anti-gun crowd that's really wearing on my nerves, because I think at a very significant part of it, there's a fundamental misunderstanding in some cases, even amongst people who normally agree with us. I mean, who agree with the right to keep and bear arms, but don't really understand what the right to bear arms actually means. So what I wanted to do was take some time today to talk about what are those myths. Let's dispel some of those myths. All right? So let's jump right into it, shall we? Okay, so the first one has to do with this particular issue. So a lot of people want to believe that the Second Amendment is what actually gives us our right to bear arms. Well, folks, I have to tell you that that's just not the case. The Second Amendment does not give us the right to bear arms. In fact, here's what the truth is. So truth number one is that the Second Amendment recognizes an already existing right. I know, you guys didn't even realize that, but it recognizes it. In fact, in U.S. v. Kirkshank, I probably butchered it. But now keep in mind, this goes all the way back to 1876, right? So in this particular ruling, they noted that this is not a right granted by the Constitution, neither is it in any manner dependent upon that instrument for its existence. All right, so what does that mean? See, understand exactly what the Bill of Rights are. The Bill of Rights was not we're going to give rights to people. It was a recognition that these are certain inalienable rights. Remember, the Declaration of Independence talked about inalienable rights. Well, this right here is just recognizing that this is amongst those inalienable rights. And what the Second Amendment noted in there was that it shall not be infringed. So in other words, it's not saying, this document gives you this right. What it's saying is you have this right. And because the people, when I say you, I mean the people. Because the people have this right, well, guess what? It shall not be infringed. And they wanted to make sure that nothing in this Constitution, nothing in this government would lead people to believe that it would be okay to infringe on this fundamental right. Now, this kind of, to a certain degree, leads into kind of the second of the myths. And let's talk a little bit about what that myth is. And that is that Heller invented. They wanted to believe that Heller invented out of thin air the individual right to keep and bear arms. Well, I think we know that to be a fallacy. Let's take a look at it. All right. So the truth number two is this. U.S. courts acknowledged the right to bear arms long before Heller. There was Presser v. Illinois, and that was in 1886. There was U.S. v. Miller in 1939. And then there was U.S. v. Vertigo I'm not even going to try and pronounce that last name, but that was in 1990. Now, in case you don't know, all of those dates are well before Heller, which was decided in 2008. All of those were well before McDonald, which was decided in 2010. And once again, each and every one of them did not say that the Constitution inferred that right or that the Second Amendment inferred that right, but that it was a right that already existed. So when people try to tell you it was just made up and came out of nowhere, yeah, no. Now you can tell them that's a bunch of hooey. You can tell them Craig told you. Anyway, so let's get on to the next one. So the next one, myth number 3, is repealing the Second Amendment would eliminate the right to keep and bear arms. Well, this one is probably one of the easiest ones to dispel based on what we know already, right? Based on the information and what we just talked about. And that is this truth is that since the right existed before the Second Amendment, in other words, since it's an inalienable right, well, then it would exist even if the amendment weren't there, even if the amendment didn't exist. It would still be a fundamental right. It would not necessarily be a constitutional right, although I believe the Ninth Amendment would probably protect the right to keep and bear arms. But in the end, what it really comes down to is that once again, it's an inalienable right, meaning it already exists. So you take away the Second Amendment, the right still exists. And in several state constitutions, they don't even refer to the Second Amendment, the constitutional Second Amendment. Even in many state constitutions, they recognize the fundamental right of self-defense and the right to bear arms. So, so no, it actually would not go anywhere. All right, what is next? Okay, truth, or myth number 4, and this is a real interesting one, that all rights are subject to limitations. Now, this is a hard one. This is a really, really hard one because one of the first things people do is they want to compare it to the right to free speech, right? And they always pull up this example, and they always say, well, you don't have a right to yell fire in a crowded theater. Now, if you watched the show before, yes, you do. Specifically, if there's a fire in that theater, right? Right? You have that right. But here's the other thing. And this is the difference. This is really the difference. I think what they don't understand is the way in which we treat the Second Amendment. And this is how we treat it differently than it seems like all of the other rights. The way in which we treat it differently is that, what we don't do in the case of the yelling fire in the theater, what we don't do is put duct tape on people's mouths before they walk into the theater. See, what happens is we have laws that are in place. And what those laws do is that if an individual abuses their right and in the process of abusing their right causes harm or injury to others, we have both civil and criminal laws that hold that individual accountable. But what we don't do is take away that fundamental right before they even walk into the theater. But that's what we do with guns. We start restricting and limiting individuals' rights before anything. I mean, before absolutely anything, we start taking away those rights because a small handful of people might abuse those rights. We then infringe on the rights of everybody. And that is a fundamental difference in terms of how we handle this particular area. It's important to note that no rights are subject to limitation. No rights. We hold people accountable if they abuse them, but we don't limit those rights. That is just a fact, and I would challenge anyone to try and prove me wrong on that. Okay, moving on to myth number 5. You guys can probably guess what myth number 5 is. Myth number 5 is the Second Amendment protects the right to muskets. Well, this is probably one of the easiest ones to dispel. And here's the fundamental reason why. And this is what it comes down to. Well, first of all, I'll tell you what. I'll just read to you. I'll read to you from Heller. And Heller will help you to have a better understanding of exactly what it is, because I think they put it better than I could. Truth number 5, and this is directly from Heller. Just as the First Amendment protects modern forms of communications and the Fourth Amendment applies to modern forms of search, The Second Amendment extends facie, I don't know. Anyway, to all instruments that constitute bearable arms, even those that were not in existence at the time of our founding. Well, what do you know? So, in other words, according to Heller, it includes things that didn't exist. It includes things that may not have existed yet. But folks, here's the other thing, and this is the other thing that a lot of people don't know or understand, is that it actually also includes items for both offense and defense, things that allow you to defend yourselves, right? For example, like body armor. Right? Now think about this. So if we're only going to protect things that were available at the time, well, guess what? Armor existed at the time. Well, guess what we now know? So armor was protected. As a matter of fact, it existed before the Second Amendment and before the United States. But if armor is protected then armor, as at least as something that existed then and before then, when the Second Amendment was written, also should be protected now. Right? Makes sense to me. I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to offer these things to you guys so that, as you go through and you participate in the debates and people are coming at you and they're talking about all of this stuff, you know what? I want you to be in a position where you can address them, where you can say, nah, look, that's not the case. The fact is that, as our founder said, we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them, meaning not only them, but among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But here's the most important. But it also mentions that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Ladies and gentlemen, you and I are the governed. That's why it's important that while we have these rights, and these are fundamental rights, if we allow our government, if we give them the power to take it away, they can attempt to take it away. So it's important for us to be active, be engaged, support organizations like the Firearms Policy Coalition as we fight from sea to shining sea for the fundamental right to keep and bear arms. It's that simple. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program, telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Gotta use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.